Hey everybody, it's Richard Harris along with Scott Leese. We are back again with another episode of Surf and Sales. Super excited because we're going to shift it a little bit. We are going to talk about sales, but we're going to talk about marketing today because I think that's a really important piece as we start to see these two departments continually have to partner better together than apart. And we're super excited that we have Sydney Sloan, the CMO of SalesLoft, with us. Before we sort of officially introduce her, by all means, go sign up for Rev 2020 coming up in March in San Francisco. I'm going to be speaking there on a couple of topics, so I'm super excited and grateful for the opportunity. SalesLoft is also one of I think they are our longest consistent Surf and Sales sponsor from Surf and Sales 1. The fourth one's coming up, so we always appreciate what SalesLoft does, and Sydney is certainly a big part of that. So Sydney, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. I'm very excited to hang out on a Friday afternoon and discuss all things marketing, my favorite topic.
Absolutely. So let's start with what was your origin story? Like did you not necessarily like where did you grow up, and we can get into that, but like were you always business minded? Were you that kid who always had a lemonade stand or that kind of stuff? I sold candy in college and school, in sixth grade. Like where would your business mindset come from?
It's interesting. I grew up in a farm, but not a typical, my parents weren't originally farmers. My dad was an architect and decided to retire and raise his kids there. So my first sales job, because I did like money, was selling sweet corn on the side of the road, Highway 395 in very northeastern Washington state, 13 years for $1. I made $385 that summer and bought all my clothes for school. And wow. I love that independence and the responsibility. And
I love that you have those numbers memorized still.
$385. I totally remember. Sweet corn and raspberries, to be honest.
Right. Did you have to pick them yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I was 12. And my dad helped me make the sign. It was this green and yellow sign, sweet corn, 13 years for $1. And then I would get in our pickup truck at 12, pick the corn, drive to the bottom of the road, which was a mile and a half away, put out my little sign, had my little change box, and would sit out there all day until all the corn was sold.
You got to drive the truck too?
Oh, heck yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool dad. Cool parent. That's awesome. That's awesome.
When you're young and on a farm, you get to do a lot of things. Yeah.
I agree. I have some friends like that too. So fast forward from there. How did you decide to so you have the business bug, right? How did you decide to sort of go into marketing as that decision for you? Like what was that drove you to that?
So I'm one of those people, I've been working since I was 12. Honestly, have had at least one job since then, and all through high school. And I went to college. I went to USC, University of Southern California, and went for an international business degree. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I was through the entrepreneur program and was the best thing because it's not theory. You get to listen to people's stories and how they made money, how they branded their company, what it was like to get your first $1 million check. And so you really got to know the people and be inspired by their stories. And when I graduated, I had all these stories to learn from, and the skill of writing a business plan. And my first business plan was on an event planning company. And that's what I was passionate about doing. And so I started working at Nestle doing events my junior year of college. And that transitioned in networking to an event planning company. And then I got into event marketing in a software company back in the mid 90s.
So what kind of event would Nestle do? What would Nestle do?
Oh my gosh. We would go to food shows.
Right.
Could you imagine being in sales for food? And so, yeah, I worked with the test kitchen on testing out how to use the products. And then we go to trade shows and we demonstrate how to use Nestle products for large food service organizations. And I get to travel with the corporate chef, and everybody wanted to see Chef Roberto. And it was fun. It was very, not quite the trade shows we go to now.
No.
Yeah.
At the end, when we're done, instead of locking down the booth, you're like trading food with everybody. And, I was in my early 20s. So, we would I ate a lot of Stouffer's lasagna.
How much is transferable in the experience of running those events to the size of the events that you put on now?
I think it goes at the end of the day all back to the experience. And what I learned there with kind of very big budgets and putting on events, and actually did the first one of the things was a sales incentive. So I got to plan a sales incentive for the Nestle salespeople and sales teams, and get to understand what motivated them. So I think all those things at the end of the day, that what I learned from events overall was how to understand what people want, deliver that to them in a way that is enjoyable, understand that there's a peak and a valley, and then really crafting things around this concept of think, feel, do. What do you want them to think? What's the key takeaway? How do you want them to feel about it? Excited, scared, fearful? What is that feeling? But then what's the call to action at the end of the day? And to do that before the event, at the event, and after the event.
Cool. I know you went there, at some point we'll sort of fast forward because we'll get into some other things, but then you went to work for Oracle, right? At some point.
Adobe,
sorry, not
yep.
Adobe, Oracle.
Yeah,
Adobe.
Haven't had to experience the Oracle.
So, but you were at Adobe for 16 years, right? It's a long time, right? We were joking offline. It's longer than a lot of marriages. Certainly older than my kids. What? How do you want to stay somewhere for 16 years like that? That's so far outside my realm of reality, right?
I think it's so far outside of the modern workforce right now. I bet if we walked around SalesLoft and asked everybody, hey, do you think you'll be here 16 years from now? 0% of people would reply.
Kyle.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count.
Sydney will be there, right?
16 years.
16 years of commuting to Atlanta. I don't know about that. I think there's a couple things. One was Adobe was a wonderful and is a wonderful company to work for. They treat their employees very well. It's a great brand. Customers really like Adobe. So when you say you work there and people's visceral reaction is positivity, that's pretty cool. It's also very successful. So you're making bonuses every quarter. And then it was global. And I think the way that I would describe it is I grew up at Adobe. I learned a lot through that company. And I think there is something to be said about starting your career in a big company because you do get the benefit of their training programs and learning and models. But why I stayed so long, if you look at it, I actually changed jobs every 3 years.
I saw that.
So
yeah.
I was able to move around. So I was in enterprise and I started in field marketing and demand gen. And then I went into product marketing and industry marketing. I marketed for developers. I would take on new products. So every 3 years, I would cycle into a new part of the company and I get to start fresh, trying to figure out what the right go-to-market motion was. And I learned how Adobe worked. So I got a lot of fun projects too. I think too, when you're in a company that's successful, you're given opportunity to grow. It's challenging every day, and it was still really exciting for me. It flew by. I can't believe I was there that long. And then when you get outside of it, you realize that there's a big world out there. I'd moved to California. I was living in Canada for the majority of that time, and so more opportunity came. And then you realize that there's something else out there. And I think like a lesson, if someone is thinking about big company, is you have to continue to build your network, not only inside the company you're in, but outside the network. Cause it took me a while to kind of regain a network of folks.
How scary was it when you actually did decide to leave and to go try something different, having known this one thing so well for so long?
Yeah. So I didn't get to choose to leave. I was let go. And I think, as after 17 years of not going to my grandmother's birthday or going back to work early and not staying off as long as I could with my kids because I was so dedicated to my job. And then that day where it was a business decision, they got rid of our division. So I wasn't just the only one, but still, after so long of dedicating your life and making choices for the company versus personally, that taught me a lot of lessons.
Yeah.
I never thought they did it every year. They'd set the strategy and do some restructuring. They did a massive restructuring in 2011, going from 5 business units to 2, which is great for them. But it hurt.
Do you think
it hurt.
Do you think the current workforce has a less, I don't want to use the word naive, but like is more aware that that's a possibility, right?
To be let go, even if you're
No,
a strong performer?
just like, I think that that sting that you experienced after having been there for so long, I think that that's one of the things that drives the current workforce to move on every couple of years rather than stay for so long. Because I think that the viewpoint from a lot of workers is, well, there's no true loyalty because look, after 17 years, a whole division gets let go and off she goes, right? So
Yeah.
why should I be so loyal to this one organization that if they have a shift in strategy, they might let go of my whole team?
I hope people don't do that. Because I think there's something to be learned about staying for a long time in a company too. When you jump around so much, you actually don't get to the hard part, right? If you're there for a year and a half, you've just kind of gotten through the honeymoon phase. And then just like a marriage, right? After that, you got to keep working at it and continuing to figure out. And then you're responsible for the decisions that you made before, and you have to figure out how to and be true to that change. And then you have to be able to move forward. So I think that businesses do change strategy, and with that comes an open opportunity. Hey, if that didn't happen, I still might be there. There are people that are still at Adobe 25, 30 years. Again, it's a great company. They pay really well. And there are a lot of companies out there like that have workforces of hundreds of thousands of people that are just, grinding away every day. But if you love what you're doing, you like who you're working for, and you're getting paid for it, it's not a bad gig at all. So I wouldn't ever want to think that people would work out of fear or not be loyal to the company out of a fear of a business change. I think it's also healthy to have gone through it, because in scenarios where I've had to be at companies where we do have a change in the direction, I can have more empathy in the conversation that I have to have with people, which is never fun, but it's more easy to put myself in their shoes because I've had to go through that. So my approach for going into those tough conversations comes from a place of understanding. And if I hadn't been let go, I surely wouldn't be here now. And there's nowhere else I'd rather be. And so it was a gift at the end of the day to set me free from that and let me go off, move here to California, see new opportunity, and then, take advantage of that and grow my career.
Well, you said something. You said, I want to sort of, from an advice point of view, you said, well, after so many years, they let me go, and lesson learned. It was almost like that day you learned the lesson, right? After 17. That's how I interpreted what you said. For people who go through that, what was the lesson, right? Like you said, no more missing grandma's birthday.
Yeah.
What are the changes you've made to stop and smell the roses, if that's what it is, or what other things have you learned from it?
What I do and what I coach my team to do, take vacation. Mm-hmm. Take vacation and leave your computer behind. Mm-hmm. Like you get, the whole point of vacation is to recharge, not to catch up on the work that you were behind on. I used to do that, right? Like, oh, good, I'm on vacation. I can really put my effort into this. Like, what? So, really take the time to take a break, recharge, reset yourself, delegate, the work will still be there, declare email bankruptcy, whatever it is, like, do that is first and foremost. The second is being very intentional about having presence with my family. So not letting myself be constantly distracted by my phone and emails. Like when I'm with my kids, like the phone all our phones are away, hopefully, and yeah, okay, I have to work on the weekends sometimes, and, that's clear, and that's fine. But it was the constant distraction. Like my BlackBerry, that's how old it was, never left my hand, and I was constantly distracted and not fully paying attention. So I would say that's the other lesson that I learned is, to set time aside to be with family and friends and be present with them. And the job is not the most important thing in the world.
You mentioned delegation. And I think delegation is a huge, huge part of leadership, especially at a higher up you go. Did that come easy for you to just automatically delegate things? Was that something that you had to spend some time getting comfortable with and learning how to do?
I learned delegation in management when I was going from, I was really struggling to kind of get through to that director level job. I'd been a group manager for a very, very long time. And so it was two things. One was that mental switch where it's no longer about proving my value. It's actually about empowering a team and wanting to lift them up. And so I think that was, I drove so hard, wanted to be recognized so long for my accomplishments and, very egocentric, and to realize and be coached, frankly. I had an awesome coach who helped me realize that my value would be in delegating, empowering, and lifting up the team. And that would give me the opportunity to ascend, to be able to now spend my time with my peer group and working cross-functionally versus trying to do everything on my own. And, working 100-hour weeks because I was the person that got shit done. Guess what? I got all the shit to get the shit done. And I couldn't get out of my own, project list to actually do other things.
What kind of things did you start delegating? Do you remember?
Projects, not having to be the lead on every project, actually giving big chunks of like cross-functional projects to people would be a good example. Meeting management, right? Like our all hands gets planned by our ops person, not me. She checks in with me. And so, it gives her an opportunity to grow and work with the team. And then it becomes more of a team agenda than my agenda. Budget was a hard one because I liked that control, but entrusting someone that they could manage the budget and work with finance. And that was a development opportunity for that person. So I think it depends. Like, I would say the things that take a lot of time or the things you're not good at are the ones that would be best to do. And, if you hire great people, that's the mark of a great leader. And
what happens if have you ever delegated something and it didn't go well?
Oh, heck yeah, all the time.
Because that happens, right? So
yeah,
because Scott and I have this conversation all the time. I struggle delegating, right? Like I really struggle. I'm getting better at it. I'm letting the boys take the garbage out now. But any experience you can share with others to say, oh, you know what? Here's how you make sure you don't make a mistake delegating. And if you do, here's how you sort of clean it up a little bit.
It's a topic I coach on frequently. And I think Adobe had a good framework that they used in training folks. So the thing with delegation there's 3 points. That's it. It's pretty easy. When you delegate, make sure that you have the person you're delegating to say back to you what it is that you delegated. Do they have the same picture in their mind as you had in yours? You'll say, hey, Scott, I need you to go out and take out the trash. And you're like, got it. I'm like, good, he's got it. Well, I meant the trash in the kitchen, the trash in the bathroom. There's a pile of stuff in the backyard. Yeah. Like, dude, like, I thought I told you to take out the trash. You're like, I took out the kitchen trash. What are you talking about? Like, there wasn't clarity.
I'm waiting for Riley to come in my door. I'm in his room. I'm broadcast. I'm like, Riley, you need to hear.
Yeah. So have them say back to you, like, okay, so you want me to take out the kitchen trash? I'm like, oh, no. I want you to take out all the trash.
Right.
And so that clarifying step in the first delegation is the first thing. The second thing is check in early and often. Until you have that rapport with the person that you can trust them, delegate, check in. Hey, how's that going? Yeah. So I want to check in the next 2 days on kind of how you're progressing, how you're thinking about scoping the work, who you're bringing in. Okay, let's just do like 2 quick check-ins. And if they're on the right path, then let them go. If not, you're course correcting like really quick so they don't go down the path so far that they're done. They get there and you go, ugh, that's not what I wanted. And then they have to roll it back because that's the worst thing to do. So clarification, check in early and often, and then empower. Like, and be okay if they don't do it the way you wanted them to do it. That is a huge lesson. It may not be exactly what you wanted, but you chose to delegate that. And if they achieved the goal, not the same way that you did, but still got it done, you got to be okay with it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I love that you you use the phrase, just like have them say it back to you. I do that on the phone with the people that I sell to, and I've trained my sales team to do that all the time, especially when somebody is like, okay, this sounds awesome. I just need to go talk to my CFO and, go get like approval for buying SalesLoft, for example, right? I'm like, okay, great. Tell me what you're going to say. I make them kind of re-pitch everything to me. And then I can kind of noodle with them, be like, okay, well, tweak this phrase. You left this part out, right? So I love that idea of, make them say it back to you.
I think you could use that in life.
Yeah.
And because you know that as you're talking, you're actually not listening to what I'm saying. Whoop, see, right? So we don't listen. And so if you're active listening and can summarize back, you used to coach your teams to summarize for the customer, because when they would summarize back as they're doing in the internal selling, you could coach them to the point that would make sure that they would pitch it the same way that you would, right? So many people don't active listening to the point that they can summarize.
Yeah.
And so it forces you to do active listening. It's so good on clarification. And I would guarantee that 90% of the time when they say it back to you, there'll be something that's different that they didn't hear, you didn't intend to say, but they heard it differently. So that clarification, especially in tough conversations, so important.
Yeah,
so important.
So important. And my expectation is never that it comes back correct or right. Never. I lower the bar of what's acceptable and just think, well, I didn't have to do it. That's less that I had to do. And so they got to this acceptable level. That's good enough. On to the next thing. This is what I've been trying to talk to Richard about forever.
He preaches it. He's like, dude, just expect it to come back flawed, because it will. But whatever they do, it saved me X amount of time, and I've gotten better at it because of Scott's coaching on this. So I really appreciate how you said it too, and I took some stuff out of that for me to use. I hope other listeners do. You start talking about sales a little bit, which I want to segue into, because you are a marketing leader. Marketing has to work with sales. They should work with sales, but you're also in a really unique situation because you guys are selling to salespeople, right? So you get to bring in not just the partnership side of what it works to work with those people, but then you even have to think about how a sales leader thinks as it relates to what SalesLoft does, right? First off, let me even ask, like, what's a good sales partner look like for you, right? What's a good head of sales, present company excluded, of course. We don't, we're going to,
I love the team I get to work with and folks like you. So I would start it by, I talk about my relationships with sales leaders over the years, and last count was 20, I call it 20 tours of duty. Because with each sales leader comes a different approach, a different style, a different understanding of marketing. And I could count on one hand where I've had a phenomenal relationship with the sales leader. And I think those times, the things that worked well were they understood marketing. And so what I could do better is understand sales, but they knew how to partner with me to ask for help in a way that was of high value. I would say if I partner with a sales leader and all they care about and all they can say to me is where are my leads, that's bad. Right. That's just not strategic. It's not aligned in a go-to-market. We're not solving the same problems together. So I can think of, his name's Greg Petratus. He's at SAP now running their commercial division. And Greg and I sat down one night and we sketched out what does the story look like? What's the go-to-market look like? How are we going to run this play together? What are you going to do? What am I going to do? And we got our story straight, and then we got our teams aligned. And then, and then we went into the trenches and fought hard together. I like I said, I have about 5 of those. There's great sales leaders I've had the great fortune to work with. And for all of them, they knew how to get out of marketing that partnership. And so if you're selling an account and you've got your SDR working and your marketing team working on your behalf, getting contacts, putting on events locally, running ads, mailing stuff to them, like, you're building out your team to support you. And so depending on what level you're at, the relationship is different. If you're an account executive versus a first line sales manager versus a leader, you're going to need different things out of marketing. So you have to continue to educate yourself along the way as well. And I appreciated that. Sorry, it's long winded, but in Sean Murray, when we were talking about pipeline and really trying to pull apart what was going on with our pipeline, where was it good? Where were we weak? He pulled us aside and he's like, you know what? I don't understand this part. Like, explain to me what you mean by this. Like, an account-based world is new and different if you haven't been selling an enterprise. And so, you still have to learn and ask and figure out together how to make it work.
What about you? What about you trying to learn more about sales too? Like what's an example where you were like, oh, now I understand something I didn't understand in sales a little better. So now I have that empathy or that perspective for that side.
One of my favorite times in selling was running the product marketing team for enterprise at Adobe. And one of the things that we did was we lined with every single region. So I don't know, the team was about 12 people and there were 12 geographies. And each one of us spent a week in region every quarter. That was the best partnership we could have ever had with sales. I actually had a desk in the office. I picked Paris. But I would go I would go in the region and I would spend a week, and I'd get there on a Sunday and I'd be there Monday morning and I'd be in their stand-up. I was an extension of their team. And I'd go on sales calls, go on ride-alongs, do enablement, see what materials they're using. And my favorite thing to do as a marketer in product marketing specifically is you spend all this time creating messaging and decks and, like 20, 40 slide decks. You go on a sales call, they use 2 of the slides, 2 of them. That's it. You did all this work, but really, and I call them the money slides. That's where the conversation happens. And you're like, bing, okay, that's what I need to focus on. That's what we need to build our messaging around. This is what the customer said. So if you're not participating in customer interactions and watching where the light bulb goes off for the customer, you're going to spend a lot of time wasting time. And so I think that is, on the message and the resonance of customer and kind of working back from there is the best partnership to have with sales. Just be with them.
It's so funny. We just talked about this with Steve Richards an hour ago. Like we were doing a couple of these today, and he said it all comes back to the message, right, Scott? Like, yeah, that was the exact same thing. So it's interesting to hear that from his side, where we often think of Steve as a sales person. Granted, he's now running an org, so he takes marketing into it. But now to hear it from your side too, I think it's a perfectly ironic that happened in the last hour.
I've talked about this a lot lately, I feel like, but it feels to me that the modern seller is having to become more and more of a marketer, and the line is blurring a little bit. Do you think the modern marketer needs to become more and more of a salesperson?
I have 2 ways to answer that question. One is I 100% believe that marketers need to stop speaking marketing, because it doesn't make sense to anybody but us.
Louder, please.
Marketing needs to stop speaking marketing. It doesn't mean anything to anybody but us, right? Unless you're marketing to marketers, stop talking marketing.
What's an example? Can you give people an example of what that means? Like,
we're talking to marketing. Well, they're big, long-winded sentence with lots of words.
All buzzwords
and lots of jargon. Yeah, we like jargon. I know. We're just good at it. But lining things up so there's action words at every beginning of the bullet, because that's how you structure a sentence. It's just this shit that doesn't matter. And I think working with sales, I love conversation intelligence, being able to watch conversations and actually see what the customer is saying, what sales is saying. Scott, your example of having a customer say something back to you is perfect. We live G2 crowd and the peer reviews, just what are they saying? Okay, that's actually better than what we could have said. So using customers' words, using sales words, and getting out of the way is the best probably thing that we can do in terms of, being a strong partner. The one difference on that though is that's in the trenches with sales, and that's around messaging. There is a different job that we also have to think about, and that's driving the thought leadership with the market and the analysts as the categories are forming. And so definitely being very clear that sometimes there's a reason why the way we market is different than what we sell, because marketing has to be a step in front. We need to be driving the innovation and leading the market a lot of times with the message. And then sales has to sell what's on the truck, which means we have to create two versions of the same story. So you have to kind of, you got to be out in front, but then they got to sell what's, we have to sell what we're selling today.
You're planting the corn and planning for the seasons, and they're the ones on the back of the truck, back to your original story.
Harvesting and selling. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then professional services, making cream corn or cornbread. Analogy going.
How often do you have, how big is your marketing team?
We just took on the inbound SDRs, which is really exciting. More ownership of pipeline is what I love. And so we're about 30.
So if you excluding the people in a marketing function, product marketing role, the traditional marketing, and it's a lot easier for you guys because it is what SalesLoft does. How often do you have them listening to the conversations the reps are having? Is that a requirement, or do you guys sit down and go, oh my God, we all need to listen to this call, it's really good, compared to other places you've been, which I don't think you had that luxury?
Correct. Although in my last company, we sat in right next to the commercial sales team. So we got to hear a lot. And then the SDRs were part of my team.
Right.
So we were doing a lot of that. And I love message testing and SalesLoft
right.
on emails. It's great. Do it one-to-one before you send it through marketing automation, if people even do that anymore.
Right.
The product marketers do it a lot. But we also get pulled into sales conversations because we sell a lot to marketing. And so I'm probably involved in 2 sales engagements a week. Also just that I know a lot of salespeople because I've been around a really long time, which is great because I've been able to reconnect with a lot of old friends. So I watch the recordings of the conversations before going into the next meeting. And sometimes I cringe. Right. And then, give coaching back after the fact. I also work out of our San Francisco office, which has 8 sellers in it, and we all sit in a pit. So I hear it all day, every day. Some really good salespeople and the new ones coming in. So I get I love that. But it's more being on the calls is the fun part, really. And it's funny. I was working on a deal and the sales rep didn't show up, and he told me he wasn't going to. But I had to pitch, and Kyle was on at the very beginning of the call. I'm not going to say the name of the company because the deal's not yet closed. But so for 45 minutes, I had to pitch and have the conversation, and Kyle listened to the recording after and did all these snippets and sent it out. It made me feel really good. I'm like, I think I might have.
You guys should publicize that.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, first CMO ever, or at least that I can think
I have a 45-minute call recording.
I think that would be massively powerful if you guys
publishes the depth. Yeah,
maybe I should do that. That is a good idea. I like that.
That's really, really.
I was pitching hard.
That's fantastic. Has the whole company listened to it? Have you guys made everybody?
No, I didn't even. I wouldn't feel comfortable self-promoting. So
we're going to do it for you.
Yeah, exactly. Now everybody's going to ask for it. Kyle, make sure everybody gets a copy of this one.
Got to close the deal first. Once we close the deal, I'll be comfortable doing that.
Fair enough.
I have a question for you to change topic a little bit. It's relevant to me because this is something that I'm helping somebody work on. So I just took on a client that rebranded recently. And I know you guys rebranded your conference from Rainmaker to Rev. Can you talk about what that's like, rebranding something and pushing it forward, pushing it ahead, improving upon it, all that kind of stuff? I'm curious because this is something that I'm trying to help these folks with, and I want to help them get it right.
Yeah, and branding is not easy to do, right? Because brand impression and brand sentiment is how somebody feels about you, and so especially when you're changing that, it's hard to do. So I'd start with that. Like, if somebody comes in and goes, we need to rebrand, there better be a good reason.
So what is a good reason to rebrand?
If this is negative sentiment, if you're trying to change what the company is known for, if they've evolved beyond what they are and they solve bigger problems, or trying to move, to change markets, or sometimes they just had a really bad brand to begin with, like, I bought it for $25. You're like, oh no, So if the brand doesn't fit the company, then that might be another reason. Well, it was my 2 kids' names and I merged them together. And you're like, oh, so yeah. I would say on that, Scott, with Rainmaker specifically, because it is a good question, and it was something that I waited to do. I think the big thing about Rainmaker, and it had been going for 5 years, was a great name for where the company was when that started. Right, we were talking to SDRs and building a vision of what their livelihood could be, and so to have that as the title made sense. And it was difficult because so many people at SalesLoft identified with Rainmaker. We have Rainmaker t-shirts, people wear them all the time in the office, and so I had to be super thoughtful about the approach. And so first of all, gathering input and feedback, like coming up with some options and gathering input and feedback, and we socialized it too with a lot of our influencers to see what was doing, or what their feedback was. And I think the biggest change is that the sales is changing, and this whole idea of the revenue experience, the revenue life cycle, the revenue team is starting to pick up some wind. Yeah. And so it was one of the first words, and I was like, oh, that's so obvious, like that's not creative enough. We got to get creative. And then we came back to it. It was like, it's so obvious. It's just so obvious. Of course, Rev, like, and where sales is going is the supporting brand. And so it's actually the name of our community first. And Scott, that you're helping us, and Richard, you're doing some stuff on there too. Thank you. And so we want to build a community for the revenue professionals. And so that includes sales leaders, sales managers, and the supporting teams for the revenue organization.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did it. So it's the event, the community. We have a RevStars program. You guys have both been involved in that too. Nominating folks to the next generation of sales leaders who we're recognizing as RevStars. And all of those are part of the relationship that we want to have with the broader revenue community.
That's great. The revenue role, the CRO role is not that old, right? Chief Revenue Officer, having marketing, sales, and customer success. And now sales ops, sales enablement is now turning into revenue ops. Right?
Yeah.
So I definitely agree that, it's changing, it's picking up wind, and it's almost, I don't think it's going to be very much longer before it's fully evolved into this new thing.
And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. Any ways that we can break down the barriers between sales and marketing is a good thing. Coming together at the people, process, technology level, will only benefit all of us.
Question for you. Tough question for you. Do you own a revenue number? And should the heads of marketing own a revenue number as opposed to MQL, SQL, or any other metrics?
Yeah, my bonus is the revenue number. As all our leaders in my last company as well. So I'm absolutely paid on, does the team hit the number, and overpaid when we do. Yay. So I believe so. I think ownership. I own the pipeline number as well. And I feel, and we talk a lot about that, like who at the end of the day owns it, and the ambiguity of, well, it's part sales because the outbound reps report into the sales team, and then, what's marketing's contribution to pipeline is still a little bit of gray area, to be honest. I think when you have, and I struggle because, and a lot of CMOs struggle on this, I think, because when it is MQLs, and they don't have responsibility for that actually turning into pipeline and closed won, I think most marketers in tech have evolved beyond that, like where we do think about what is our influence and contribution to closed won business, and understanding what those conversion rates are and being able to pull back and seeing what converts and what doesn't, and why that is. And it's not easy necessarily to track a lot of that, but it's possible.
I
Yeah.
feel like there's quite a bit of resistance, and I would argue that to the degree that, you know, you're comped on revenue number and things like that, like you're a little bit of an early adopter, and SalesLoft is maybe even a little bit of an early adopter. I just feel like there's so much resistance to that, so much. Like if I go on LinkedIn and I make some little comment on somebody's post, I get attacked by marketing people. I'll get attacked straight away for even suggesting that marketing should own, you know, a revenue number. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? Shouldn't we all just be aligned? This, like, we all want to be more aligned. I can't think of a better way for us to be more aligned. So why the lag? Why is it not just the norm now? Why is it not standard?
I'd say two things. One is where you're signing up for something you don't control, right? So you may be the best or the worst, marketing team out there. But if you don't control the rest of the process, that's a risk of your personal viability. But the counter to that is you should own it, and you should be able to have a strong enough relationship with the sales leadership in order to be able to address the issue. Like, like, this is where I kind of go, it doesn't make logic sense to me. If I'm going to generate and spend a lot of money and effort and, you know, sweat, blood, and tears to generate leads that don't convert, then why am I not working as hard to figure out why they're not converting and help the sales team convert them than just continue to create leads that don't get worked? Like that just doesn't make logical sense to me. It's stepping across the bridge to sales, and, you know, understanding what they go through and spending time and helping educate them on the types of leads and why they're a lead, and being honest with yourself. It's a bad lead, then don't pass more of those along. And I think it's an evolution still. It's not perfect.
Are you still compensated at all on MQLs and SQLs? Is there like,
I don't have MQLs.
you don't,
No.
you have them from the state of like, well, here's the pipeline.
I have hot leads we measure. So those are ones that automatically go to an SDR, and our conversion rates are very, very high on those. So, and then we measure account contacts that are added to target accounts. And then we do attribution back to the things that we're investing in. So we look at it so many different ways, but we don't use MQLs. We use accounts engaged, contacts engaged, target account conversions, account engagement across the different tiers. We're evolving because target accounts work, I think, really well in mid-market and enterprise, and it doesn't work as well in SMB. And so we're evolving to a hybrid model. We probably will go back to a little bit more. We're actually doing a project right now on what we would name them, but it won't be an MQL.
Yeah, it's interesting because it feels like it's a more holistic approach, which ties you to the whole revenue number, because it's not one little thing. It's not a white paper download, right? And it's sort of the evolution way past Marketo and Eloqua and those kinds of things. So it's interesting. So we sort of spin it at the end, you know, we turn this around a little bit and ask you something, which is, you've been so gracious with your time, is how can we help you? How can Scott and I, you know, support you, support SalesLoft, Reb 2020. If you haven't signed up, please do. But what's something that Sydney's working on that's like, well, I don't know, here's something I could ask you guys.
Well, I mean, we do partner with you, and we are very grateful to that, and the insights that you bring. I know, Scott, we're working on, you know, this stuff for how do we help educate and evolve the frontline sales managers. It's really important for us as we think about our goals in the Rev community. So continuing to do work on that. And I think just community overall, right? Like, we want to be able to be helpful. I think that's all three of us, right? Or all the collective greater part is, you know, how do we continue to help sales evolve and understand what great selling looks like, what good selling look like, and what, why not to continue to do it the old way. So anything that you can contribute to and that we can amplify to our audiences, bringing more people to learn that through whatever mediums we produce. So we're trying to do a little bit more. Obviously Rev is big, and we've got lots of great customers sharing their stories. And I know, Scott, you're not a fan of big conferences, and I totally get it. There's the balance for intimate settings as well, and we want to be able to do more of that in region. So partnering up with us on smaller events is I would be very grateful for.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm all about smaller events. I have reasons for not liking the big events.
It can be intimidating. I mean,
it's not to say that there's no value in large events. I just think that the value is completely different, and I think a lot of people go there with the wrong expectations, and therefore end up wasting time and money and that kind of thing. If you're going there for the right reasons, then it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. The triangulation, where I'm trying to go with Rev, and I was lucky enough to have it back in the days at Jive, is that it's not an event. It's a community first. And if you spend time in the community, going to your regional meetups, getting to know your colleagues and peers, when you come to the bigger event, you still have your collective group that you're with, and you still have your place.
Yep.
You're just exposing yourself to new ideas, networking. And when you have a digital forum, you start to get to know people. So in the days at Jive, when we would throw our big event, and it was a couple thousand people as well, it was a community gathering. And you knew the people that were there, and you'd go say hello, and you've been talking to them online. And it was that chance to get the face-to-face when you've been in conversation. And I think a lot of us that follow you guys on LinkedIn too, feel like we know you. And so, you can go say hello and talk about the impact that you've made, and just continue to encourage people to share.
I think you guys do that too. If you go to a Dreamforce, or you go to another event, you go, you rent out the Salt House every year. I assume it's there again next year. And
we're going somewhere bigger.
Oh, good. So we're at base camp. But you try to bring that community in from the larger community into a smaller community, and you do bring that in. And I appreciate that effort, because I think we all know that's where it all really happens, right?
Yeah.
So
this has by far been the friendliest conversation I've ever had with a SC graduate, by the way. 25. We have 25% of the Pac-12 represented right here.
We do. Yeah.
I will say this is the friendliest SC conversation that I've ever had.
Yeah.
When I moved to Canada, I kind of gave up on all of that. So
did you get Canadian?
I don't hold any grudges.
Which healthcare system are you on right now?
Blue Cross. Yes.
Yeah.
American, but I have the Canadian health insurance plan, the lifetime plan.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Sydney, thank you so much for taking time to chat with us, and giving up part of your day. I mean, literally the last day of the year. I get it. I know you're in marketing, but you're tied to sales, so I know it matters. And I know you've got your SCO coming up next week, and then you've got Rev coming up in March in San Francisco, which is different. So it's not like you can just say, hey, somebody run to the office and grab something, right? It's a different experience. So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you. Awesome to be with you guys. Thank you for everything that you do. Yes, absolutely. Please come to Rev if you haven't registered yet. I'll pass along something you guys can put in your promotion to get a discount for folks that have been watching the podcast.
Right. Cool.
So we can put that in the special offer. I don't think I have it on my team. Oh, hold on. I've got it right here. Okay. They're so good. So the promo code for Rev 2020 specific to the podcast is SURF VIP, SURF VIP.
We got our own.
Get 50% off the registration fee.
That's fantastic. By the way, to anybody listening, we had no idea that she was going to say that.
No.
Totally.
That's a good Easter egg.
Very, very cool. Awesome.
That's a good Easter egg. Thank you, Sydney.
Thanks so much, Sydney.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.